On today's episode of Gamer Logic, we are doing a video response to Brett Weiss's video on Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Brett got this game in Christmas of 1988 and was totally disappointed with it when it came out. What are my thoughts on his video, and what are my thoughts on Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest? Watch on to find out. So hey guys, I'm Mike Murtis, Gamer Logic, and thanks for taking the time to tune in today and watch the latest episode. You know, I thought today would be the most perfect time to talk about Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest and really how it started my entire love for Castlevania period when I was going through my Facebook feed and I found that Brett Weiss had posted his latest video talking about Castlevania 2 being a huge disappointment for him. Now, if you haven't checked out Brett's content before, I highly recommend you do. His tales from a retro gamer are awesome. I'll put a link to his channel down in the description below, and you should check out his latest project that he's working on. He's had a very successful Kickstarter with it, and I believe he's extended it. He is doing an NES omnibus, and I am super looking forward to this because I have both volumes of his SNES version of that, and it was great stuff. Great articles, quality all around to it, so definitely go check that out. But yeah, he was talking about Castlevania 2, and I'll summarize because you should really go watch his video on it. But he got the original Castlevania shortly after he got his Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987, I believe it was, and Castlevania 2 came out in 1988. He got it for Christmas, and it just didn't do it for him. It was so left field from what the original Castlevania was that he just really couldn't get into it, right? And for me, it is a completely different scenario as far as how much Castlevania 2 appealed to me. And I mean, take a look around this room, guys. If you've seen my video tours and just look behind me, you can see the Alucard statue from Castlevania Symphony of the Night there. Right next to him is Simon Belmont. I have all the Castlevania figures. I've got original prints from some of the cover artists and stuff that actually did the original artwork. I'm a huge Castlevania fan, so let's go back in time into 1988, 1989 maybe, and enter a young Mike Murtis who just received a Nintendo Entertainment System for his birthday. He has Super Mario and Duck Hunt and the clay shooting game, and he is ready to experience everything that is Nintendo. He had a Commodore 64 before that. He had an Intellivision, and his parents decided to give him a Nintendo Entertainment System for his birthday. And being very, very young, I was probably only 5 or 6 years old, I was enamored with the NES. And much like the VHS tapes that you could rent back then, you could also rent Nintendo Entertainment System games. The first game that was ever rented for my Nintendo was Double Dragon, and that was such a cool game. Little did I know how different it was from the actual arcade version of Double Dragon, but I loved it nonetheless, and it was so cool that we could get games for so cheap. So I'll never forget going out with my grandma and my Uncle Joe, as well as my mom, and we were just doing general shopping. We were going to Kmart and Jewel and all the other stores around the area, and I think I picked up like Micro Machines. My uncle got me a Micro Machines for just whatever the occasion was. And we come home, and at the time we lived in a apartment. It was a 3-story apartment. We were up in the 3rd story, and we climbed the stairs. And as we are coming up to the apartment door, I hear this music, and this song to this day still gives me chills. It's still one of my favorite songs in the Castlevania franchise. Bloody Tears is playing. I'm hearing Bloody Tears. And we open up the door, and my sister is in front of the television and in front of a NES controller, and she's playing this game. And she's walking around through this nasty swamp, and she's hitting monsters like the Wolfman and these slime monsters and these zombies and all this other stuff. And I'm like, what is this? This is so cool. And she's like, yeah, we rented another game. Me and Dad went out and we rented another NES game. And she handed me the manual, and she said, this is Simon's Quest. This is Castlevania 2. And I'm looking at the manual, and, you know, for me, I know there's kind of a giant departure between how Simon looks in Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 2, at least from the cover art perspective. Castlevania 1, he's very much a barbarian, where in this, he is more of a, I don't know, he seems like he's got a little bit of royalty to him. Like, he beat Dracula the first time, so let's give the guy a new suit of armor and everything. But seeing him and seeing a vampire, which I would come to find is Dracula behind him, I thought this was so cool. So I watched my sister play this for about an hour, and I reset and I started in this town and was just walking around, exploring and talking to villagers and finding out that I could buy items. And here I go, I wander off to the left of town and I enter a swamp and I die again, and I die and I die and I die. And I come to find out that's not the way you go. You need to go to the right. And playing the game, I started understanding, you know, what the whole concept of it was. What am I supposed to do? You know, hey, Dad, can you read me the story in the instruction manual? And okay, I'm after Dracula's body parts. So you start piecing together the mystery there and going on and on and on and trying to figure out what you do with this game. And to Brett's point, as far as how much of a left field turn it was from the original Castlevania, he's absolutely right. And the biggest thing is just how obtuse the game is in comparison. I mean, Castlevania 1 is a straight up action platformer. You know what you're doing. You're at the beginning of the stage, get to the end of the stage. Castlevania 2 totally erases that, right? And it puts this whole world in front of you. It doesn't really tell you exactly what to do other than, hey, get these body parts. Where do you go to destroy these body parts afterwards? Maybe talk to some villages. Maybe they'll tell you what to do. Maybe Graveyard Duck will tell you what to do, right? Hit your head on Deborah Cliff so you can ride a tornado. All of this weird stuff, which, being a young kid, I had no idea what the hell was going on with any of this stuff. But it didn't really matter because it was this big, huge world to explore. And you really can't beat Castlevania 2 without some sort of help. Easily, you cannot beat it without some sort of help, hands down. How did I beat Castlevania 2? I didn't beat it on my first rental. I wandered aimlessly. I had fun, but I wandered aimlessly until we had to take it back. My dad brought home by the editors of Consumer Guide, more strategies for Nintendo games, and it was how to win at Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, and Double Dragon. He picked it up because I was struggling at trying to beat Ninja Gaiden. And it just happened to have all these other great games on there. So, of course, I see this magazine that he gives me, and I go through and start reading all the different strategies and stuff are in there. And wouldn't you know it, it has passwords in here and strategies on how to beat the game. Some of the features on here in this article actually tells you how to put in the password to have all the items and how to get to Dracula and everything. So, of course, I'm super pumped now, and I begged my dad, hey, can we go to the video store again and rent this game so I can beat Castlevania 2? I'll never forget going into the video store, grabbing Castlevania 2, and being so excited that I told the checkout lady at the video store that I was going to be able to beat this game now. I had all these secret passwords, and I felt so cool. And this lady was like, "Kid, you're so weird." But nevertheless, finally, having those passwords and removing some of the mystery from that game, I was able to proceed and get all the body parts and burn those body parts and have the final fight with Dracula and see some of the different endings, which I thought was another cool thing. Multiple endings in a game, right? Simon can die, Dracula can die, what have you. It just felt so cool and so different. And again, the graphics were great. The gameplay, for the most part, was there. It was Castlevania, just kind of in a different world. I think Brett said it best when he said that it was left field, right? But I had fun with it. So fast forward many Christmases later, I really want to complete the game. I do end up getting a used copy of the game for Christmas. I still have it today, still in great shape. And I was able to finish it from start to finish using miscellaneous hints from Nintendo Power, as well as other methods of finishing the game. Now, in that time, before I actually walked through and beat all of Castlevania 2, I obviously knew that there was a Castlevania 1, right? So that was something I asked for Christmas that following year to figure and see like what it was all about. Like, I had no information, no knowledge of what Castlevania 1 was. It had to play like Castlevania 2. Maybe you went to other places that were completely different from what you visited in Castlevania 2. My sister actually got me a copy. She found one. It was very hard to find a copy of the original Castlevania. Boxed copy complete. I got it for Christmas. I opened it up and I put it in my NES and I hit start, and here's Simon walking up to the gates of Castlevania, and this is what? This is stage-based? What is this? This is totally weird. Wait, you mean I don't go to town? I don't go to the church to refill my energy? I recognize some of these power-ups and everything from Castlevania 2, but this is just kind of like Mario, except I still have my whip and I'm still fighting monsters and everything, but this is nothing like Castlevania 2, and this is kind of hard. I'm getting my ass kicked pretty hard here. So, in comparison to what Brett experienced was, he played the original Castlevania and then kind of got walloped when he played Castlevania 2, because totally different from what he was expecting. And it seems like totally different from what a lot of people were expecting. But for me, it was the opposite. Castlevania 1 totally threw me for a loop. And at first I didn't like it. I continue to play it because, again, like Brett mentioned, you get a present for Christmas, and of course you got to play it. And I played it, and I learned to love it. I learned to enjoy it for what it is. But in the scheme of things, do I like Castlevania 2? I totally like Castlevania 2. I totally love Castlevania 2 because it's what introduced me into the series. I'd be totally curious, though, how I would have felt personally if my experience was reverse. Would I have enjoyed Castlevania 2 if I would have played Castlevania 1 first? Now, at the end of the day, the best Castlevania for the NES is Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. And after that, my favorite Castlevania game, period, is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But I obviously grew to love the series very, very much. So that's a little bit about my history of Castlevania 2. And I like it. I love it. It was groundbreaking to me when I played it back in 1988, 1989. So what are your memories of Castlevania 2? And did you play it when it first came out? Did you play it later in life? Did you play it on the Switch re-release of the Castlevania collection? And that was also available on different systems. So that's all I have for this episode, folks. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.